Welcome to the Sisters in Crime Writers Podcast. Everyone has a unique writing journey, so join us for conversations about those journeys from the writers themselves. This is Julie Henricus, the Executive Director of Sisters in Crime, and I'm delighted to welcome Tenesha L. Curtis to the podcast this week. Tenesha has been a lover of the dark, disturbing, and deviant since childhood. In her kindergarten and elementary school years, her favorite movies included classics like Child's Play, Problem Child, Candyman, and Adventures in Babysitting. As she learned to read, she finally broke away from Nancy Drew and Hardy Boys at the behest of a middle school teacher and delved into reading literature from artists like Toni Morrison, Edgar Allan Poe, Patricia Cornwell, Mildred D. Alvin Schwartz, Ayn Rand, and Maya Angelou. Her fascination with the human psyche led her to earning a master's degree in addictions psychotherapy and working in the mental health world for over a decade. She uses this training and experience to influence straightforward books on writing, made especially for newbie authors, and thrilling works of fiction in various genres. Tenesha, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Julie. Glad to be here.
I'm really looking forward to this conversation because there's a lot to dive into, and you covered some of this in your bio, but let's talk about writing. You know, you talked about your reading journey, but when did you say to yourself, I want to write a book? And talk to me about, that craft building element.
Well, I guess it probably started in, I'm going to say 5th grade. I've been writing basically since I learned how to. So that part was there. I started with journaling and, started making up little stories and stuff just because I love to read so much. But then in true ADHD fashion, I procrastinated on a project about Phyllis Wheatley, a poet, Black poet. Yeah. And I decided that in order to bulk up my scant presentation, I was going to write a poem, right? Like about the poet, of course, that makes sense. And so I did that, and I got up at the front of the class and I did my presentation, and I ended by reading the poem. And I look up and my 5th grade teacher, her name was Leslie, is crying. And I'm like, oh God, like I didn't know it was that bad. You know what I mean? I'm like, wow. Well, I screwed that up, And so she asked me to read it a second time. And I was like, okay. So I read it again. And she's like, that was so beautiful, Tenesha. You really have talent. And so I feel like that was the first time I really was like, okay, beyond just liking to do this, other people may appreciate it as well. And so I feel like it kind of blossomed from there. As far as my first book, that I don't know that it was one of those situations where I was just going to rip the Band-Aid off. I don't know that I was like ready or anything like that, but I'm the type of person where I will just get so in my head with the fear and the doubts and all of that, that if I try to wait until I'm ready, I just won't do it, basically. And so I remember I literally was just sitting at home and I was like, okay, it's done. This is the best I think I can do. Like, this is it. And I just clicked publish, and it was the most terrifying thing that I've ever experienced in my life. And it was okay. I was like, okay, it's over with. It's done. And I remember at that time, this is early KDP, right? I just uploaded it as a free book, right? And that took a lot of pressure off me as far as kind of, trying to make people pay for it and all that sort of stuff. And I mean, within 24 hours, I had hundreds of downloads, and I was just like, oh my God. And so it was delightful and still horrifying at the same time. Like, people are going to read this, like, oh my God, what are they going to think? Well, like, it was a lot. But so I feel like I said, it's something that's just had been building up since middle school. And it was just me finally just kind of pulling the trigger on it, being like, all right, let's just try it, see what happens. If you hate it or it's horrible, you can just stop, right? I mean, as with most things in life, but at least you tried it, right? And so everything's just been pretty uphill from there, though, is basically how that's gone.
Well, I loved what you just said, and I want to just, underline that, obviously virtually because we're doing this on an audio, but, that you get in your head and you just keep talking yourself out of even trying, and how much courage it takes to get out there with your creativity, which is so personal, and just do it. But how freeing that is in so many ways.
Yeah. And I think it's, so I'm really grateful to my education as a clinician, because I think that has helped me so much, like through these processes of, because again, there's just a lot of steps to the book publication and development processes, and then with helping other people do the same thing and all that, especially since I mostly work with beginners. So the vast majority of my clients are first timers. They don't know which way is up type of situation. So I found that the major, there's a few things that help. One is when it sounds like Schadenfreude. It's not, I swear. But it's like when I see like a big five, celebrity type author mess up, even just like I'm reading their book and I'm like, oop, typo, you know what I mean? Or something like that. Yeah. Or even if they have some major mishap, it just like a misprint, something like that. Then I say, see, they're just human beings, just like you. They make mistakes just like you do. It's okay. And people think I'm like, looking down on them. I'm like, I'm not. I'm trying to bring myself up to the point where I'm like, see, it's fine. Like, it's okay to be a human being and, not be quote unquote perfect and all that sort of stuff. And another thing I'll do is like when I'm reading books, I will flag where I find things that I'm like questioning, or I'm like, I don't know if I would have made that design choice or whatever. And when I'm done with the book, I can look at it and it's that same thing. It's just like, see, look at all this. Now you've had a fantastic time reading that book and look at all these red flags. So relax,
So you're talking about two different things too. And I want to talk about both of these things because I think once you're involved in publishing, I find that I'm much kinder to typos because, 10 people have read this thing and it's still manger, not manager. I mean, it's not good, but, there you go.
Yeah, it's really, and that's why, like a lot of my editor colleagues, I will say, please go write a book, right? It can be about anything, but there's something about, you learn so much when you go through the process of being an author that is so vital to helping people from the editor's standpoint that I always encourage y'all, please write about your dog. I don't care. Just go through that process so you can get that firsthand knowledge, because it's so, so valuable. And so I just feel really lucky that I get to do it repeatedly, as an author year after year. And I really do think it helps with my business. It helps me be a better book coach. It helps me be a better developmental editor, like all of those things.
Well, let's talk about that building of craft and understanding. I think reading, most writers are readers, and that helps with story structure. But when you first start and you're writing a book, your very first draft is going to be terrible. And I always say that, and everyone's just going to give themselves a break because, you fix it. That's part of writing, is fixing. But how did you learn or sort of keep developing your craft? Because you write in different genres, you do different things, classes, talking, do you have a writing group? Like, how did you keep building the craft?
Right. Well, I do. The main thing for me, especially with the different genre stuff, is that I read in different genres. So I have noticed that there are people out there who, like, literally their entire bookshelf is paranormal romance, or their entire bookshelf, is crime fiction or whatever. And it's like, okay. So it helps me just being a more eclectic reader because I'm familiar with all these different, genres. So that's one thing. But yes, I'm a part of two writers groups here in Atlanta, and I help with like the Atlanta Writers Club. I am an admin with them. And so I do try to just participate, in the writing community here in my area, because when I'm there and people are sharing their pieces, that is part of my kind of repertoire of experience as well. I'm seeing how people are writing. I'm seeing how people are responding to how people are writing in kind of this like microcosm. And that helps me get a better understanding when I'm working with clients of how someone might perceive, what they've put down on the page and how they might want to tweak things based on whatever their specific goals are. So most of it, though, is, of course, just reading and being familiar with what is kind of currently popular in the market for various genres. But then on top of that, it's like I said, with the flagging stuff that I read, it's that analysis and kind of holding that editor in the back of my mind as I'm reading to notice these different things. And now sometimes it'll be hard. Sometimes, especially with like a thriller, like I'm just so it just enraptured with whatever's happening that I'm like, I could miss all kinds of stuff that just like doesn't make sense, or maybe there's a plot hole, and I might go and look at like other people's reviews and be like, I didn't even notice that, because I was just, they had me at that point, like 3 chapters straight. I just, I wasn't breathing, type of situation because I was just in it. So that can be difficult. It's fun, but it can be hard, especially like I said, I mostly work with newbie authors, so I can't say it happens like all the time. But I have had manuscripts like that where I'm like, I don't even know why you wrote this. This is fantastic. You know what I mean? Like this is in really good shape. And I have to just stop myself and say, okay, back up, start the chapter over, because you were way too enthusiastic about it. Like, try to be a little more clinical and do your job. But that's, of course, it's a good sign and everything. But yeah, so I think that, and then again, just spending time in these communities where people do this for a living. As a member, for example, of the Editorial Freelancers Association, we have a Discord channel or server, and it's really active. And so people are constantly sharing resources and asking questions about projects and, all this sort of stuff. So just being steeped in it, I think, is just super helpful versus 99% of your day is other stuff. And you might carve out a little niche for writing. I think it's really hard to grow as a writer in that sort of situation versus this is what I do all day. I'm surrounded by this, pretty much all my waking hours, let's say. So I think that's really, really helpful.
One of the benefits of reading diversely, in different genres is that you also become familiar with the tropes and the rules of the different genres, right. Which you need to understand before you break them. I mean, you need to understand romance structure and the tropes and everything else before you decide to kill them at the end or something, because, that may not be the best choice for romance.
Listen, and that's what's so funny is that I love something like that comes like out of left field, like, what was it? Me Before You, right? I don't know if people have read it, so like plug your ears real quick. But at the end, the love interest dies, right? The euthanasia. And so a lot of people don't even recognize that as a romance, but of course it dominated the industry. It sold a bazillion copies. It's super popular. And I loved it simply because it stuck out. You know what I'm saying? Because I had at that point never read a romance that was that powerful and had, all the classic elements except, how things ended. And I think it's important too, because love is more diverse than that. Right? Yeah. It looks different ways in different circumstances. And in this particular story, allowing him to make that decision for himself was part of how she showed her love and his mother, you know what I'm saying, and his family. And so I'm like, well, that's fair. You know, that happens. It's a thing. Like, that's real life. And I think that's part of what I liked about it too. Nothing wrong, of course, with the bubbly, happy fantasy, you know, romance. But I love the grit and the realness of like, no, this is a hard decision. And I have to figure out how I'm going to support this person that I love so much in such a hard situation. And so I adore that. I always love it.
And it's adding those layers. Was that considered a romance though? I mean,
if you go on Amazon, it's top of the romance category. That's why I said it's so interesting because like you said, there are people who would say, well, that's not a romance, even though it was 99% hitting all the, you know, cookie cutter, right? Yeah. And that one piece at the end, that's the only part, because it was tragic, sure, right? Now it's not a romance. Well, then what is it? You know, it's 99% romance. So like, it's an interesting question, but I personally love it. And again, in that category, it is dominating. So it's like, all right, I don't know. An awful lot of people say it's a romance. So I don't know what to tell you on that one.
Do you, you know, I when you're reading, and, you know, I love this talk about analyzing, because I think that as a writer, that's important. And sometimes you can't, as you said, you can't, because you're just enjoying the book or you're hating the book. So you have to go back and say, all right, you know, if you didn't like the book, when did I stop liking it? Like, what pulled me out? What, you know, not how you would write it differently, but, you know, looking at it and saying, okay, what worked, what didn't, how can I understand this? It's work, but I think that that's such a critical ability to develop as a writer.
Yeah. Because I mean, again, yes, of course, it's going to help my client, but it's going to help me too. I can't go through that process unscathed. You know, it's going to impact me as a writer as well. So it's really just like double dipping, honestly. So it's good stuff. Yes.
So I want to talk about you as a writer, but then I definitely want to talk about your work as a coach and as an editor, because I think it's so important for people to understand the roles and the importance of these roles, especially, well, for everybody. But let's talk about writing. How do I call it the gravitational pull of an idea, you know, where you're thinking thoughts, you're reading articles, you're thinking of, you know, whatever you're doing. And then all of a sudden you have this moment, this spark, and that pulls in the gravitational pull of enough ideas that this is going to support a story or a novel. But, you know, where do those come from for you? Is it character? Is it the world? Is it a plot point? Is it, you know, something, your, you know, motivation, especially given your background? Is it, you know, humanity? What gets your ideas moving?
Well, that is one of the few bonuses of having ADHD is there is no drought when it comes to ideas. I mean, I literally will just be going on about my business. I go, ooh. And what I do, and I encourage my, you know, students to do the same, is because they'll be like, oh, well, I'm afraid I'll forget. But their solution is to immediately go start writing it. And so then that takes away from what they were working on, and it just becomes this big ball of like a mess, right? And I say, okay, so what I do that I found helpful is I will immediately hop in Google Docs, open a new file, give it a, you know, working title, and write the premise, write whatever popped into my head, and it's there. I got it. That's done. If 3 days later I think of something else that I want to add to that particular concept, I just pop in Google Doc, add it in, and move on. But I don't have to dive into it out of fear that I'm going to forget, you know, or anything like that. It has a place in my files. So that is super helpful, just as far as not doing the squirrel thing, you know, like, and just having all this different stuff. Now, not to say that I don't do that, but it just helps minimize how much of that happens. But I mean, I wouldn't say there's any one place. Like, I've gotten ideas just in all kinds of situations. And it's just because my brain is constantly going. And it's just going. And so all I try to do is when something pops up that I'm like, ooh, that's interesting, just save it. Just give it a spot, and then you're good to go.
It's such a great tip, because some of us may have a running document, but if you're creating a separate document for each idea, that
Mhm.
means you can keep working on those ideas as they come to you and they're not all glommed together.
Exactly. Right, right, right. And again, as you have an idea that, because you may have a different idea that fits one project versus another, you know what I mean? And so then it's all, like you said, separated and categorized out. And then that way everything's organized pretty effortlessly, right? Because again, Google Docs is on my phone. So it's easy
Yeah.
as I can text. I can just bloop, bloop, pop a new file in there and call it a day.
So when you write, do you plot in advance? Do you start? How do you write?
I literally, I it's actually pretty weird because when I was writing, I would say before I got to high school, I wrote without an outline. And I don't know. I don't know what happened. And maybe because we started more structured, like college essays
Yeah.
and stuff like that, like maybe. And I think I must have just realized, oh wow, writing stuff is so much easier when I have a plan, and so from that point forward, I cannot remember the last time I wrote something and didn't have, unless it was like, a party game or, something like that, of
Right.
course we were writing off like extemporaneously, but other than that, yes, I must have an outline. I actually teach a whole, section about that as far as like how to set up your thoughts. I have these 5 P's of premise prep, and I just kind of walk people through that, and it's been really cool because what happens is people will be like, "Oh, I'm stuck," and 9 times out of 10, it's like, "Yeah, not really. You don't have a plan. You just got in the car and started driving, didn't realize you didn't have any gas," type of thing, right? So your car is fine. You just need fuel. So, and how many times somebody's come to me like that, and when I walk them literally just through those 5 P's, all of a sudden they're off and running. It's like having a full tank of gas just out of nowhere with the snap of a finger. And so I'm like, well, generally speaking, if you have a plan, it just makes it easier. I'm not saying, because I know there are people who have issues with outlining like conceptually, but it's what's hilarious is so many students that have come to me like, oh no, I don't want to outline because of whatever myths they've heard about outlining. But then when I start walking them through the process, they're just going like gangbusters, and they got all these ideas and they're getting all this writing done. And it's like, okay, so it probably isn't all that bad, but all right, so it's been pretty cool. But yeah, for me, I have to outline. I have to start with my 5 P's. I have to get some kind of structure going, because otherwise, like I said, I will just wander all over the place. It'll never actually get finished because I'm just writing in circles.
Um, so when you're writing and the 5 P's, it's part of how you teach and what you do. But do you outline as far as scene by scene, or do you have here's where stuff's going to happen, and if I'm veering off a little bit, I still know I've got to hit this mark?
Well, it kind of builds on itself. So I'll start off because, like I said, the 5 P's are really just the basics. And then I grow it out from there. So I personally, yes, I will have a 3-column outline that will have the chapter, the scene, and then what happens, right? And but yeah, even though I need that level of support, some people don't. I have what I call just a 3-point outline. Just, okay, what happens in the beginning, what happens in the middle, what happens at the end. And after you finish the 5 P's, it's pretty easy to do that. And so some people can take that and just run with it. And it's like, all right, cool. You're still using an outline. So, yeah. But you just don't need as much support as I do. I will have the 5 or 10 page, just like all the stuff, beat by beat sort of situation. But again, that's just what my brain needs. So I need those kind of pathways to show me, where I'm trying to go. And also, I've just found that it saves so much time, money, and effort on the back end, because what'll happen is, like I said, you kind of write around in circles and it gets really messy. So then you bring it to me and you pay me to clean it up. But a lot of the organizational stuff could have just been prevented if you had an outline, right? So it's just, and I try to reiterate that to people, not that I don't love, paychecks and all, but it's just like FYI, You could have, done a lot of this on your own if you had just had an outline and followed it. I remember I usually tell a story about the person who came to me with a 600 some odd page self-help book, right? Right. Okay. So if y'all could see Julie's face. So I'm like, okay, for a self-help, and he, explained the concepts. I was like, well, that's really simple. That's not 600 pages worth of. So I'm like, well, I really think, I think you should probably go back and just look at, because you've had to have repeated yourself or gone off on tangents. There's no other, like my editor sense is going off. I'm pretty sure that's what happened here. I guarantee you could, at the very least, cut this in half on your own for free. But they just kept, no, I really want you to do it. Okay, but it's going to be like $7,000. Like, this is huge. Are you sure? Yeah. I went, okay. And so I did it, got it down to like 50 pages of actual content, right? Because the rest of it literally was just repetition and tangents. It was just like, okay, well, so, like I said, I've covered this before in a couple of my books where people have these kind of myths about outlines. And I think that's why a lot of people don't use them. Because again, it's a tool like anything else. So yes, if you use it inappropriately, you're not going to get good results. Understandable. But if you use it appropriately, it can be super duper beneficial. And in this case, it would have saved this person 4 figures easily. Because if they had brought me 50 pages, they would have paid a lot less than 600 plus, right? So it's just such a huge tool. I really try to push it, but people are going to do what they're going to do. But yeah.
Well, I think one of the myths that people have about it is that takes away from the creativity.
True. That's one of them. Yeah. And it's like, no, it just helps you organize the creativity.
Right. Because at some point, if you don't do it in prep, it's the same thing as story structure. At some point, you've got to look at what you wrote and make sure the beats are there and it's this, there's action and it's moving in the right direction and all the stuff isn't clumped together in the beginning and, nothing till it's the same thing. It's just prepping that beforehand so that you're not, losing time and momentum or writing a 600-page manuscript for a 50-page book.
Right.
And whereas I would imagine this person had to go through and then redo it. I mean, add stuff or figure stuff out because you're wasting your time.
Yeah. I mean, it's just, and like I said, I get it with first timers, especially, but that's just part of my job. I feel like it's the education piece. It's like, all right, so you can either do this now, like on your own. Or
you're going to do it after. Yeah.
Right. Or you can do it later on your own for free with some tears in your eyes, or you could pay me to do it. But gosh, wouldn't it be easier just do it now for free? You know what I mean? Like, just do it up front.
Well, and there are very successful pantsers who just will literally start off with okay, there's a Christmas party, and then they go. Yeah. So there are people who can do it, but I think even folks who write that way at some point have to stop or usually stop and say, where am I going? What am I doing? I'm stuck.
Right.
Like I'm in a corner right now. I don't know what's going on.
Right. And I think that's true. And I think part of it could be that people see people doing that and say, oh, okay, well, I'm going to pants as well. And again, totally fine. Nothing wrong with that. But my thing is I'm about people making educated decisions. So my question would be, are you pantsing because that's really what works best for you? Or because it sounds like it's easier and that's what you're going to do? Even though most outlines, I mean, especially if you're not, a nerd like me and making this long, detailed one, you could do an outline in like 10 minutes for most, concepts. So it's not like it has to be this long, drawn out thing. I think the other thing that trips people up is that they think that outlines are written in stone for some reason. I'm not sure where that comes from. I'm like, well, no, you can make changes as you go, but it's like having a GPS route. you want to get from point A to point B. The GPS is going to show you what it believes to be the shortest route to get there. But if you want to stop at the library or the grocery store on the way, okay, like it's not going to stop you. But you just know how to get back on track when you're ready to, head back in that direction. That's it. So I just, yeah.
And and you know these statistics as well, better than I do. 97% of people who start out to write a book, not even talking published, we're talking about just write a book, begin to end, finish a manuscript. 97% of the people who have that on their bucket list don't write the book.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So it takes focus. I do think it's brave to keep going, especially if you had success in another career and then you're starting this and you realize I'm not good at this, right? Like it needs to be fixed. And everybody I know who's a writer says every book, this is the one where they're going to find out I can't write because I'm stuck. I mean, everybody has those doubts, but I think it's an important thing to get that book written, even if you never do anything with it, just to understand how to write a book.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's super helpful. And it's just, there's also just that sense of accomplishment, like you said, because I'm not one of the 97%. I did get it done. Yeah. I did type the end. That can be huge for somebody's self-esteem, confidence, all of that. And if you're anything like me, what often happens is that victory has enough momentum to carry you into other victories, what I mean, type of situation. So it can have so many benefits. Like you said, just do it. Even if you do nothing else with it, just get to the point where you type the end, and that's huge, literally massive.
Right. And again, it's a lifelong craft. You're not a master. You're better every time you do it, but you're always learning. You've got to be curious and think about things. That's, I think, one of the best things, but that's also, I'm sure, frustrating to some people. It's like, what do you mean I have to learn how to use different points of view or something? It's,
Yes, that's a huge one. And I see that a lot in my fellow editor community. Is just because I do love learning new apps, websites, technology, that sort of stuff. So that has always been fun, interesting, and easy for me. But I see the struggle that people go through when there is this software updated, this thing about their app, or whatever the case may be. And for me, it's just like, oh, okay, cool. And I go on about my business. But for them, it's like, oh, no, they updated it. They moved this button, and I'm like, oh, dear. Okay, wait a minute. Let me help. You know what I mean? Because I promise you, it's not that scary. It's not that bad. But, I get it. It's different, And so when you've gotten so used to using something or doing something in a certain way, it can just be hard for some people, change, like a lot of people, right? Yeah. Change can be hard. And, it's just, I think, we're talking specifically about technology, but in so many parts of this business, being flexible and being teachable are super helpful, super duper helpful. They keep you ahead of your competitors. They keep you serving your clients well. And like I said, in a lot of cases, that's essentially what's keeping you in business, right? Is that you have that knowledge and you have that ability so that you can be flexible and you can adapt to changing situations, because if you can't, it's really easy to get left behind,
And when you're working with people or for yourself, it is important to understand genres and where things go and how to categorize things. But it's also, if horror, romance, thrillers all of a sudden become a thing and you don't read or like horror, you don't write it because it's the thing, because you got to love the genre you're writing in. Do you agree with that?
I generally, yes. Where I've found some interesting situations is where people do that. Right. And it seems like what they've done is they've just found a niche, and they've really just exploited it as much as they can. Like you said, they do understand all the tropes and, all this sort of thing. But it's like, if you look at their bookshelf, there's nothing like that on their on their bookshelf. And it really is them leveraging that knowledge for financial gain. So I won't say that it's impossible to be at least commercially successful doing that. But gosh, that sounds miserable to write, like day to day in a genre you don't read and don't even particularly like. And I'm also, because like in my mind, for a lot of the books that I've read, it seems like the author is having a good time. Mm-hmm. Right. I feel like that can often the number one, for whatever reason, I don't know why, John Scalzi is my top author for that, where I just feel like he is having a blast with every book of his that I read. I'm like, he's just having a ball out here. And so I do think that's important. And I do, again, encourage my students, hey, well, what do you like to read? Just focus on that. And you can write in that genre really well. Number one, because you read it so much, right? So you're familiar with it. And then number two, because you're writing in it, you're going to have such an easier time. You're going to have so much more fun and do it so much better than trying to write in this genre over here, because you think, oh, well, that's where I can make some money. You can make money anywhere now. It'd be a little harder in some genres than others. I'll give you that. But you can make money anywhere. Have we talked about dinosaur erotica? Like, that was the one. When I learned that genre existed, I was like, oh, okay, you really can write whatever you like and make money. So don't worry about that so much. The key that I found is really just finding your audience, because if you like this genre, I guarantee you there are other people that like this genre. And that's really, I think, the biggest hurdle for any author is just, okay, am I finding my people? Because once you do that, like, you're golden and you just keep producing for them and you're good to go. But when you try to hop out of your comfort zone a little bit too much, especially without the investment, like you said, you don't read that genre, you don't really like that genre, you're literally just doing this to try to make money, it can just fall kind of flat sometimes. If not for the readers, like maybe you're selling and that's fine. For you, because I just that just seems like that would feel terrible. You know what I mean? It really feels like work. When I'm writing, it doesn't feel like work. It is technically, I'm being paid to do it, right? But it just doesn't, there's not that grueling, kind of grind to it. I'm just like, oh, this is fun. Oh, and then she did this. Oh, yes. And then this happened. I'm having a good old time. So yeah, I do think it's important. I just want to recognize that there are people out there that are not following that guideline, I guess. And I just, if you see that, fair enough, but just understand that there's easier, more enjoyable ways of doing that, right? By writing in the genres that you actually love.
There's so much to unpack with that, and it's such an important point to make. And I do think joy, again, it can be a dark subject matter, but if you can feel the author's enjoying writing or has joy in what they're producing. And that is something that makes a huge difference for readers. Yeah. When you're coaching new authors, new writers, writers, authors of the publishing world, we're going to talk about that, but new writers, whenever I talk to folks, I tell them to start simple, like one point of view, maybe even first, but don't make it complicated, because simple's hard enough when you're first learning how to write a book.
Yes.
Don't use 5 points of view in your first book, because that's like years later you can pull that off. But, don't do that to yourself.
Right. That's exactly how I'm like, listen, I know it sounds great. I'm just telling you that even if you do it poorly, it's just a lot of work. You know what I mean? It's just a lot more to manage than is absolutely necessary, in my humble opinion. I've never run across a manuscript where somebody wanted to do, like you said, 3, 4, 5 different POVs. And it was like, or else we're just not going to be able to read this book. It's going to be illegible if we don't have all these POVs. You know what I mean? And it's like, okay, so why are you doing this? These people can be involved. Don't get me wrong, but this is a lot, and there's no big benefit here. So That is a key thing. And as you know, in sections of my book, as I talk about these different things, and like I said, while I'm coaching people, I say, yes, this is an option. Yes, you can do that. Yes, you can add all these extra elements, but you don't have to. And I think sometimes people get it in their head that the more complicated the book is, the stronger it is.
Right.
Like, no, like, don't get me wrong. I love a nice, like, what I like is like when there's one little thing that just seems completely meaningless that happens and makes you go, because you've been following the story and it's so complex, right? It's like, oh my God, she twisted her wedding ring to the left. No, you know what I mean? Or whatever. And again, it's only because it's such an intricate plot and all these little things matter. And that is great. Like I said, I adore it. But like you said, it's like that is a lot to manage. And it's really difficult to do in a way that's clear and accessible to your reader to the point where they can have that reaction to such a tiny behavior. So, yes, absolutely. Do not be afraid to start simple and just stay simple all the way throughout. If that's, if that works for you, don't worry about, try. Because a lot of times, too, we're trying to copy what we see other authors who are doing whatever we want to do, that level of success. We try to copy them. It's like, okay, but you got to remember they got here by doing what worked for them to the point where they got to where they are now. If you just start trying to copy where they are now, it might not work for you because you didn't go through that process. This is a customized thing that they are, using over and over again to do this. And that is based on their circumstances, their audience, their writing style, like all the things, right, that are personal to them. So, yes, I want you to do that too, but I want you to do it for yourself and get your customized toolkit for your own authorship. And then you can do the same thing in your own way. But yeah, it's it's interesting. So, yes, I definitely encourage starting simple. I definitely encourage paring down and really focusing on the crux of what you're trying to do. So if it's something like self-help, it's like, okay, what is the heart of what you're trying to say here? What are you trying to teach people? How are you trying to help them? If it's fiction, okay, what is the core? That's where the whole premise prep thing comes in. Like, okay, what is the premise? What is the core of this? And as we're going through, and that's why I think it's so helpful to have a solid premise, is because as we're going through, and even as you're writing, you can say, this serves my premise, this does not serve my premise. And if it doesn't, put it to the side. If it does, keep it in. And that's a very easy way to organize your content before you even come to me. You know what I mean? Like, if you just know what your premise is, it's very easy to say, because that's all I'm going to do. I'm going to say, well, what's your premise? Oh, okay, well, this thing can go, this thing can go. That chapter doesn't need to be there. It's very easy because I know what the heart of the content is. So just sticking to that. And again, that's hard enough. So it's like, please don't overcomplicate this. It's already difficult. So,
Tenesha, can you define premise for me? I want to make sure I'm understanding how you define it.
Sure. So I have the 5 P's of premise prep, and basically for every book, blog post, magazine article, song, whatever, every written piece that I've ever read, these are the 5 elements that I've found in them. And when they're there, it sings. Like, this is like, oh, this is a solid piece of writing. I love this letter, this blog post, whatever it is. But when something is missing, you can feel it. You're like, something's a little off. You know what I'm saying? Like, where's this? And now that I've been able to identify what they are, I can usually say, hey, your promise is missing the second component, or, it looks like you messed up on one of your tunes, or, you know what I'm saying? Like, all this different stuff. So the first one is person. And that's just for fiction, that's who you're talking or who you're experiencing the story through the most. So your main characters, quote unquote, right? And then you've got your pain, which is my favorite part. But my second favorite part, really, the pitfalls is my favorite part. But the pain is that person's problematic trait, right? So this could be something as superficial as, like, in a mystery, I don't know who the killer is. That's it. That's my problematic trait. And I'm trying to resolve that over the course of this book, right? Other times it will be something like alcoholism, a short temper, naivete, whatever. It could be anything. And then I have more intricate exercises about kind of fleshing that out. But you just pick a pain, and that's your thing for that character. And then after you talk about their pain, talk about their prize. What does this person want? So If it's a mystery, like I said, if we're staying pretty superficial, I just don't know who the killer is. I want to find the killer. That's it, right? It can be that simple, right? And so, but again, I'll have newbies who want, well, there's 3 or 4 things that they want. Okay, that's nice, but hold on, just pick one. Right? Let's just focus on that right now. And so that's their prize. That's what they want. And then now my actual favorite is pitfalls. So that is whatever's standing between them and their prize. So this is when you get to torture your characters. Beautiful. It's just a great place to be. So you just figure out all these ways to foil them, one of which is going to be their pain, of course, right? And so especially when it's something that's not quite so superficial. So when it is something like a mental illness or even a physical disability, whatever the case may be, that is going to get in the way of them getting their prize as well. So you tangle all that in and it can just get really interesting really quickly. And then promise is twofold. So one is the promise of how you're going to resolve that person's pain. So again, easy enough. I started the story off. I don't know who the killer is. By the end, I know who the killer is. Resolved. Done. Or you can address the pain. So I don't know who the killer is at the beginning. By the end, I'm closer to catching the killer, but you have to wait till book 2 to see if I actually catch him, right? So it's at least addressed, but it's not resolved. Fair enough. And then the other part of the promise is, and again, the idea is this is your promise to your reader, right? That this is how I'm going to resolve this. And then this is the package that I'm going to put it in. So is this a psychological thriller? Is this a rom-com? Is it, like, what is this? Is this a quick self-help guide? Whatever. Just what kind of package are you going to put this information in? And so once you have all of those, you pull them together and you can create a 1 or 2 sentence, usually, just summing up what the core of that particular story is, right? So the example I usually use is one of the books I published back in the time of the dinosaurs. But we can get those 5 elements down for that story in a celebrity housewife uses bioweapons against her husband's mistresses. Like, boom, like that's the heart of the story. So if I'm going through and I'm writing, it's very easy for me to be like, okay, does that serve this premise or no? Like, am I going too far off on a tangent? Because I know what the core of the story is, what the actual heart is. And so when I say premise, that's what I mean. It's being able to just succinctly be like, hey, this book is about, and in a couple sentences, tell me what it's about. Uh-huh. And I really got it. I got the crux of it.
So first of all, I love learning. And so you just, made my brain go ping, ping, ping a million times. And also, you can learn different ways of character development, but this is just another layer that you can add on to your work that will help you focus. And this is great, Tenesha. I mean, just from, this is great. But what I love about it is that understanding that everyone needs to develop is even your subplots have to align with your premise. Everything has to serve what you're doing with this book. And that's a clarity that I just, if you're writing a scene, you may love the scene. You may just love writing the scene. But unless you're serving that premise, the scene doesn't belong.
Right.
Put it in the file. Use it again later. Right. Or have something happen that will serve it. I think that's what a gift to the people you're working with, to sort of have them really think about that, just so that they can stay on point as they're writing.
Yeah, no, I think it's, like I said, super helpful for me, but I'm glad you find it helpful as well. That's great.
No, I do. I mean, I've heard goal motivations, things like that. But I love the way you're taking all this stuff and then you're packaging it as but you're putting it together as a premise so that you could put that in front of you on an index card on your computer, just going, is this serving what I'm trying to do?
Right. And again, just for folks out there, remember, keep those Google Doc files. I'm telling you. So even if you have a scene, like you say, you love it, you showed out writing this scene. This is beautiful. Has nothing to do with the premise. Put it to the side. And what you can do is you can use it as part of how you offer your email list bonus content. So it's a deleted scene, essentially, that you can include with their subscription. So it can either entice them to read the book, or if they've already read the book, then it's just a little extra goodie that they get, on top of all your other emails. So it doesn't have to go to waste, quote unquote, is all I'm saying.
Okay, so now you get, ping, ping, ping in another way. I'm going to be useless after this conversation because my brain is. But let's talk about publishing, because I think this is a nice segue. The business and understanding the business and how it works. And, you have your fiction, but you also write books to help folks understand what's going on and how to do things, how to write the book, but also about indie publishing and things like that. Talk to me about that learning curve for you, because that you can control to a certain extent, and then algorithms and everything else, but then you can fix things. But it's a lot to learn how to be an indie published author.
Absolutely. It's a lot, but I think based on what I've seen, it's totally doable. And it's more about leaning into doing things in ways that work for you. So like, I'm not a super extroverted person, which is why unless an extrovert asks me to, you'll rarely see me at like a conference or something like that, because I'm just in the house, right? So it's like, okay, or, doing something virtual. But there are other authors who are all over the place. Bobby Nash is one of the worst. I mean, I swear, like, I can't remember the last weekend he wasn't traveling somewhere to go to an event. I'm like, oh, you make me tired just watching you. But, and then of course there's people in between, right? And so, but what a lot of people will say is like, you have to do it. You know what I'm saying? Like Bobby's way or whatever. It's like, you know what I mean? Like if it doesn't work for you, especially because the main thing with me is, like I said, I'm not a big extrovert. I'm not a social butterfly. So I'm very often in a crowd. I'm like sitting in the corner, quietly type of situation. So I don't think that I get as much out of it as somebody like Bobby, who talks a lot, who's very gregarious, very sociable and outgoing. He draws people to him when he's at an event type of situation. And so I feel like he's going to get a better ROI from that in-person event than I will. Plus, he's not going to be anywhere near as exhausted as I'm going to be after that event, right? So, but it's not like you can, and again, a lot of authors do, make a living virtually, you know what I mean? Selling your books and interacting with fans and all that sort of stuff from the comfort of your own home. So if that works better for you, I would always encourage, hey, do that. That's fine. Or do more of that. But trying to do something that somebody says works 100% of the time, which is of course never the case. So that's already a red flag, right? It's like, so if somebody's saying that this thing works, nothing wrong with trying it, of course. But if you're finding that was a lot and I really didn't get a lot out of it, just stop. It's okay. Obviously, that's just not one of the tools that's going to be in your toolbox. Not a problem. There are thousands of others. So yeah, for me, that's really the main thing, is being, again, it goes back to being flexible, being teachable. If you are open to learning things, indie authorship is so much easier than if you're very like rigid, or like I said, you keep trying to put yourself in situations where it's not really a good fit. Then yeah, it's probably going to be a drag, and it would be really tough.
One of the other sort of in between these two things, being a writer, being an author, is editing. And when you're an indie author, if you're not an editor yourself, you need, and you also, I don't know, do you hire editors for your own work?
Oh, yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely. Even Even when I was a therapist, therapists need therapists. Like, y'all don't think that just because somebody's a professional something that they don't, in theory, like I said, I'm sure there are people out there who, because they call themselves an editor, they refuse to hire an editor. Okay, that's their business. But generally speaking, if you're a human being, editors are really helpful.
It's an elegant way of saying what I was going to say, because also if you're going the indie route, editors are helpful. Developmental editors, let's talk about the different kind of editors. A developmental editor will do what you did with that 600-page self-help book, which is say, this is working, this isn't working, think about shifting this, like look at the overall. They're not going to rewrite the book for you, but they're going to say, this isn't working, or you lost me here, or you've got to add more, or this character doesn't have enough to do, or something. They're going to give you that kind of feedback and guidance.
Right. Well, and again, it kind of depends on the editor. And that's another reason I tell, my clients, or just when I'm talking to people in general, it's like, be more mindful of the service description than of the label, because it's not like, medicine or law where it's like a triple bypass is a triple bypass, right? Like that's it, right? A prosecutor is a prosecutor. Like that doesn't really change. That means the same thing across the board. But in publishing, at least this has been my experience the past couple decades, is because I remember I had a lady came to me and she was like, hey, I got this developmentally edited. Price she paid sound like developmental editing price. But she said all the lady did was give her like a couple paragraphs of feedback. I was like, no, okay, that's not the way I do development. I guess that's all I can say. If that's what she wants to call it, cool. But for me, developmental editing is much more intensive, takes much more time. And I know it's a little bit different for me, especially since I work so often with newbies, is there is much more like hand holding, like me and the newbie are under the hood together trying to, bring this thing home. Because the biggest problem is, for example, I could say to someone, hey, in this scene, you really are telling a lot and that's great. You got a lot of detail, all that is awesome, but it's a little overwhelming. Could you do some showing instead? And for a seasoned author, they're like, yeah, I could do that. Switch it over. It's not a big deal, right? But for somebody who's never written a book before, they're like, I don't even know what that means. You know what I mean? And so going to an editor who's not going to help show you what that looks like is kind of a disservice to yourself. But again, not that you know any better, but it's just the idea that if I know you're new, I know that throwing these words at you is not going to mean anything, or you're going to say, okay, and you'll try to rewrite it, but you'll basically just end up with rearrangements of the same poor elements that you had before. And so I will help them like, okay, well, watch this, here's this paragraph. Look how I rewrite this. Do you see how now that's showing, actually educating them about how to make these adjustments versus just telling them to do X, Y, and Z. And so, if you want just somebody to read it and just give you some feedback, that's more of what I would call like an alpha reading or something like that, or a manuscript evaluation. And so that's fine. But again, I'm at getbookhelp.com. You go to susiesediting.org, she's going to do something totally different. So instead of getting wrapped up in developmental editing, line editing, copy editing, say, okay, but what does that mean to you, ma'am? You know what I mean? So that you make sure you're getting what you're looking for.
I love this. This is great. I also think as you're working with newbies, part of what you're doing is helping them trust their own work or trust what they're doing. Mm-hmm. So you can, because sometimes people will show and then they tell you they showed, and it's like, you don't have to tell me you showed it. Right. Like, you know what you're doing. Trust yourself. You're doing this, And
sometimes it's about trusting your reader as well. Like, okay, you didn't literally need to spoon feed that. Like you did such a good job over here. You know what I mean? And so you kind of undercut it when you like sum it all up in this sentence. We got it. You know what I mean? It's okay. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I love that. So where we started on this is if you're indie publishing, you've got to hire editors at different parts, because copy editing is looking at grammar and, thing. And then proofing is the thing we started talking about at the very beginning, how you're going to miss stuff. It doesn't matter how many people are looking at this manuscript, you're going to make mistakes, but you got to really take that part seriously. And you can't trust yourself to do the proofing because you know it too well. You're going to fix everything in your brain, and then it's not going to make it to the page.
I try to tell people that. I'm like, listen, I literally have a master's degree in this. I promise you, because it came out of your brain, you're not going to be able to see it clearly. That's just how it works. So I love that you feel like, oh man, I read through it and I didn't see anything. That is good because, if you read through it and see stuff, of course, right, that's tough. But if you read through it and you don't see anything, that is one stage. That's fantastic. However, let's get it over to somebody who does not share a brain with you and see, what we see. And, I remember this one lady told me I made her cry. And I think it was a good thing. Don't, I wasn't like assaulting. Yep. Okay. So she came to me and she was like, and one of the questions I'll ask sometimes of potential clients is, how many books did you read this year or last year? And the lower the number, the rougher the condition of the manuscript. It's almost guaranteed correlation. The more somebody reads, the tighter their manuscript. Like the last time I had one of those, I don't even know why you brought this to me. They read like a book a week. And this was just their first time actually writing one. But it was like, oh my God, this is amazing. I can't wait till you publish this type of situation, right? So she said, oh, I think I read like 2 books last year. I'm like, okay. So, but she's like, but you don't understand, I write every day at work doing like administrative stuff, right? And I'm a really good writer. I'm like, okay, well, let's, just hand me like the first couple chapters. Like, let's just take a look. And it was one of those situations where it's just like, okay, there are dozens of problems on like the first 2 pages. So, but I go through and I saw this. And mind you, I'm not a copy editor. So if I am seeing a bunch of typos, there are probably 2 times as many, right? I just didn't catch them type of situation. So when I sent this back to her, she said she literally broke down in tears because she honestly believed that she was ready to go. And you know what I mean? Because she had come to me just for like the publishing part, like, hey, how do I upload to KDP? That sort of thing, right? That sort of help. She didn't want any editing services. But my thing is like, well, hold on. Are you sure? Well, yeah, I looked at it a bunch of times. You and who else? Nobody else looked at it. No, I'm a good writer. And that's how we got into that conversation. And so, but it was just, I think it was a growth thing, right? It wasn't, I don't think, I didn't do anything disrespectful or anything like that, but it was just like, well, sweetheart, if you think this is good to go out under your name, hey, it's your life and your career. You do what you do, but you see all of this, and this is just the first couple of chapters. I guarantee you, it looks like this throughout the entire thing. Right. So my recommendation would be that you go ahead and hire an editor and, make sure we go through that process. That was just a wild situation, but it's just y'all just to tell everybody, like, I know you can read it billions of times, but at the end of the day, until you get somebody else's eyes on it, there's just, and again, nobody's going to catch everything. Nothing, no such thing as a perfect book. No. I get that, but you can do so much better than just looking at it by yourself. So much better.
Well, and also having another reader look at it for structure. I mean, there's the copy editing and the typos, but there's also structure. I mean, and again, finding somebody good to do that is not necessarily your mother who loves you and is never just thinks you're a genius because you breathe. It is somebody who'll say, there's nothing that's happening for these 50 pages.
Why is this here?
Why is this here?
I think people forget that even because some people say, well, my wife is really, she's really harsh. Like, she'll really rip me to shreds. I'm like, cool. Here's the thing. You and your wife have been married for 40 years. You don't think that y'all think a little bit alike, right? And see things a little bit alike. So even if she's not trying to withhold information or not say something, there are jokes that are going to land for her that nobody else will get. There are references that she understands that nobody else will understand. And she's not going to think to say anything because it makes sense to her, right? So that's another part of kind of the fatal flaw of being like, oh, my mom or my wife or my, my uncle looks at it. Again, better than nothing, I suppose. And if you have $0.00, I get it. You got to do what you got to do. But again, educated decisions. Understand that is not the highest level of quality that you can achieve. And you just have to be okay with that. If you decide that, you're going to publish something after you and, your uncle read it and that was it. I mean, just, okay, I can't stop you. You're an adult. You do what you do. But as long as you fully understand and go in with eyes wide open, that's up to you, I suppose.
Well, and the other point you said was when you talked about that woman who sent you the 2 chapters, you made a reference about it's your career. I think people need to really understand that too. When you're especially debuting, you don't have that moment to live over. Now you can take things down and fix them, sure, but that's not the point. You want to put your best foot forward and also understand that the next time you do it, you're going to be better at it. Mm-hmm. So,
and all the time I tell people that is half, if not 75% of where the guidance that I'm able to provide comes from, because I've done that. And I know this is not cool. Like, so I don't want that for you. I've been there. So I'm saying, listen, there's a way to avoid this. And if you do X, Y, and Z, you can avoid this. And I really want that for you. I can't want it more than you do, right? Because you got to do it at the end of the day. But the least I can do is say, yeah, I've tried that too. And it didn't work out so hot. So I wouldn't recommend it.
Well, and Tenesha, let's underline that as well. Nobody cares about your work as much as you do. I'm going to help and I'm going to support you. Yeah. But you've got to be your own advocate. I can't fix that for you. Look, and also you have to love it. And nobody's going to love it as much as you do. I mean, this is just outside validation. Sales are helpful and they're great and that's good. And listening to readers is good and stuff like that. But it's going to come from within. Right? It's a hard business. Yeah.
I mean, it can get so overwhelming so easily as well, especially as a newbie. And that's why I tell people, I'm like, so often just that initial phone call or people schedule book coaching sessions. And it's like just that, can offer so much value from the guidance standpoint, because it's one thing to know where you want to go and just kind of head in that general direction, right? Versus knowing where you want to go and knowing which paths will take you there safely, which paths will get you there more quickly or with less money or all this sort of stuff. So again, like I said, I'm a big experimenter. So I will try stuff out and adopt different strategies and stuff like that and kind of see how they work, watch other people using them, things like that, to try to help when somebody's like, well, hey, can I, try this? Okay, sure. But here's a couple of things I ran into that you might want to be aware of, type of situation. So yeah, it's a lot. It can really be a lot.
So as we're, obviously you and I could keep talking forever about all of this because this has been fascinating. But as we're wrapping up, what do you want people, especially new writers, to take away from this that's encouraging, but also some tough love? This is why a writing community is so important, as because you need other writers to actually support you and take care of you when things are going, and then to give you a kick in the butt if you're getting stuck or you're getting in your own way. So what do you want folks to take away from this that's both tough love but also encouraging?
Well, because the first thing that comes to mind is this popped in my head when I was speaking at the Editorial Freelancers Association conference a few years ago. And I just told people to don't gatekeep yourself. And what I meant by that was there are plenty of barriers out here. There are plenty of negative people out here. There are plenty of people who are going to say you can't, again, not because you actually can't, but because they don't think you deserve to, right? And so don't do that to yourself, right? Mm-hmm. So if you need, like you said, to grab a couple writing groups and put them on your schedule, do that. Don't say no to yourself before you hit a no from somewhere else, right? Go seek out those services. Go seek out that support. set a writing schedule, like do whatever you need to do to support yourself. Don't worry so much about trying to copy what somebody else is doing because it may or may not work for you. But when you find things that work, hold on to them, right? Don't let anything stand in your way, especially if it's not actually there, right? It's just something in your head. Well, okay. Well, people might not like it. Okay, nobody likes every book. All right, what's your point? You know, be that person in your own head, and so what? You know what I mean? Like that ain't got nothing to do with me. I'm still going to write it. I'm still going to publish it. So yeah, just don't gatekeep yourself. If other people try to do it to you, find ways around them, but don't do it to yourself. That is the most, I think, poisonous thing to an author's career is for them to be the ones to say no to themselves. Don't do that.
Well, and this is why an author may need a book coach, as people in other lives need therapy or a life coach, is to say, don't, you're getting in your own way. Let me help you with that. But I think that's another, don't gatekeep yourself. You got pearls of wisdom dropping from the skies on this conference.
Yeah, all right. Sounds good.
I'm like, get lots of memes coming out of this, but I love that. Don't keep yourself. Yeah. No, that's fabulous. Tenesha, thank you so much for a fabulous conversation.
Yeah, well, thank you, Julie. I appreciate it.
Thank you for being with us today. Sisters in Crime is about community. We were founded to advocate for women crime writers, and we continue that mission by fighting for equity in the crime writing community. Sisters in Crime is an international, inclusive organization for all who write and love crime fiction, mystery, thrillers, and suspense. Join us at sistersincrime.org and make sure you subscribe to this podcast.